Hi, welcome back to this week's video series where we're talking about the people that God values. People that God values who might not otherwise be valued by the world, humanity. This started on Sunday with our Sunday sermon. And we talked about three people that God values in that sermon. We talked about how God values the broken, the failed, and the defeated. Then we have two videos since then where we talked about how God values those who feel incomplete, and God values those who have walked away. Today, we're going to talk about how God values those who are burned out and who hasn't been at one point or the other. Those who have felt burned out in their lives. Have you ever felt that way? Kids, busy with kids, have a full time job, busy with all kinds of other things, and at some point, you just got enough. I can't do anymore. You just feel burned out. Maybe getting up early and going to bed late, operating on 4 hours of night sleep a night. And I'm guessing a lot of you have been there at some point. Well, today we're going to talk about how God values those who have felt burned out. And a good example of this in Scripture comes from First Kings chapter 19. This is part of the story of the prophet Elijah. And in the previous chapter, he had his famous showdown with the prophets of Baal at Mount Carmel. And some of you may know this story, some of you may not. For those of you who don't, Israel was ruled by a wicked king named Ahab and his queen Jezebel, and they invited prophets of foreign gods to come into the country and mislead the people into worshiping false gods. And at one point through the story, the prophet of God, Israel's God, comes forth, Elijah, and he challenges these false prophets to a showdown at Mount Carmel. Says, let's see whose God can bring down fire from heaven. And the prophets of Baal call on Baal to do that. It doesn't happen. Elijah comes forward and calls on the God of Israel to bring down fire from heaven, which he does. And the people turn to the God of Israel, the God of their grandfathers, the God of their ancestors who brought them out of the land of Egypt. So they turn back to him, and Elijah tells the people to execute the false prophets of Baal who had been misleading the people. Well, Ahab and Jezebel, who had brought these false prophets to Israel to begin with, aren't happy about it. We'll pick up the story in chapter 19, verse 1. And Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done, also how he had executed all the prophets with the sword. Then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah, saying, so let the gods do to me, and more also, if I do not make your life as the life of one of them by tomorrow about this time. And when he saw that, he arose and ran for his life, and went to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah, and left his servant there. Then he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness, and came and sat down under a broom tree, and he prayed that he might die, and said, it is enough. Now, Lord, take my life, for I am no better than my fathers. So Jezebel, when she learns that Elijah had these false prophets executed, she sends a message to Elijah and says, may the gods do to me what was done to them, and more also, if I don't do to you what was done to them. In other words, may the gods kill me if I don't kill you by this time tomorrow. And Elijah, recognizing this is a powerful woman, she's the queen of the country, he decides to flee for his life. He flees for his life to the country of Judah, just a short distance to the south, and he seeks refuge in the wilderness where he prays. Let's read that again. What does he pray? It is enough. Now, Lord, take my life, for I am no better than my fathers. Basically prays that God would kill him because he's burned out. Another way of saying this is that God values those who are depressed. So, and I'll say this every time I talk about depression because it needs to be said. Yeah, there's a real medical condition of depression. It's nothing to be ashamed of. If you struggle with that, go see a doctor. Nothing to be ashamed of in going to see a doctor for it. There's also spiritual depression, which which Elijah is experiencing here. And God values those who experience this, those who experience being burned out, those who experience depression. He's not done with Elijah. If we continue reading the story, that's what we would see. He's not done with Elijah because he still values Elijah, despite Elijah being burned out, despite Elijah being depressed. Have you ever experienced burnout or depression in your life? Have you ever experienced burnout or depression in your church membership, your activity in church? It happens. It happens to a lot of people. And taking a break is not wrong. It can be encouraged. Taking a break can be healthy and normal to want to do. But don't ever get the impression that God no longer values you because at some point you felt burned out or depressed. Go to Him in prayer and know that He still values you and He's not done with you. So thanks for joining me today. Again, this is a ministry of Lakefield Baptist Church, and I will talk to you more later. Thank you.